The Panama Canal was begun by the French in 1882 and completed by the United States in 1914. Cutting through on the canal saves ships money and time from going around the tip of South America.
The country of Panama forms a reclining letter S with the Atlantic Ocean on the north and the Pacific Ocean on the south. It is about 50 miles from the Atlantic to the Pacific at the canal zone. The canal zone is 10 miles wide.
The canal system is made of 6 locks and 2 artificial lakes, Gatun Lake and Miraflores Lake. The 3 locks on the north are the Gatun locks. They lift the boats 85 feet to Gatun Lake, a vast man-made lake that carries the boats 23 miles across to the Continental Divide and the Pedro Miguel locks.
From there, the boats travel a mile across Miraflores Lake, through the Miraflores locks, and out to the Pacific Ocean. It takes about 9 hours to pass through from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
We enjoyed several events on the canal during our 8-day stay. On our first day in Panama, we watched a cruise ship lock through from the balcony of our lunch stop, which was the visitors center at Miraflores Locks.
The locks are 110 feet wide. The large cruise ship has about 2 feet on each side of it. The ships go through at all times of the day and night. It's in operation 24/7.
You notice people in the swimming pool as they're crossing, and people waving and cheering.
The mules on the tracks on each side of the lock keep the ship from bumping into the sides of the lock. The ship travels forward under its own power and has a Panamanian pilot at the controls.
They're in the process of building additional locks that are wider.
There are ships waiting both on the Atlantic side and the Pacific side to get through. Companies that want their ships to go through quicker can pay more money and get to the front of the line quicker.
The next day, our tour bus took a 50-mile trip up to Cologne to the Gatun locks, and from a different observation point, we watched a huge cargo ship go through.
The mules are on tracks. They are machines that have cables, and the operators of the mules respond to the directions of the pilot on the ship.
The mules cost over $2 million each. In this scene, you can see that there are 2 sets of gates for each chamber. When one set needs repairs, the other will operate. This is a fast motion shot of the gates opening.
The ship is carrying a lot of containers, which eventually will be offloaded onto rail cars or trucks for distribution on land. Ships that are carrying a lot of containers may be too wide for these existing locks, and if that's the case, all of these containers can be transported through the canal zone on an existing railroad. So the containers would be offloaded at one side, either the Pacific or the Atlantic, and transferred to the other end and then loaded back onto the ship.
Here is one of the original mules. The highlight of our trip was going through the Panama Canal on a small boat that holds about 60 people.
Our trip started at Lake Gatun, and we went through 3 of the locks to the Pacific Ocean. So we didn't go through all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
But we got the experience.
Here we see the Centenario Bridge, which was opened in 2004. It's the newer bridge. The older bridge is the Bridge of Americas, and you'll see it a little later.
In the first lock, we were surprised that a sailboat tied up to us. Through observation throughout the trip, we learned that several boats tie up together when they are in a chamber and the water is rising or lowering. The employee on our ship was constantly tying and untying to other boats or to the sides of the locks. Here we are down in a lock. We're following another boat into the next chamber. Here we are tying up to another ship. The water is a muddy greenish brown, which is unusual for the canal system. A few weeks before we were there, Panama had so much rain and flooding that the canal system was shut down for a few days. The water is still muddy and not very pretty. There are tugboats helping a large ship through.
Opportunity available on this boat. As for me, I think that's going to Egypt, well, not now, but maybe some months afterwards, and not taking a picture next to the pyramids. So I'll be here in front taking the certificates.
Looks like a very
Pushed out after they close.
And now we're traveling out of the lock. And there's the visitor center where we had lunch and watched the cruise ship go through on our first day.
We've exited the locks and are headed toward the Pacific Ocean. This is one of the dredges that they use to get the sediment out of the canal. These are large cranes that load containers onto ships and unload ships, putting the containers on railroad cars.
And these are all boats waiting to go through the locks, I believe, and they're assigned a particular hour when they can go through.
This is a Bridge of Americas. We have just passed under it. Now we're headed to the dock where our transit through the canal will end.
We spent 8 days traveling in Panama with Sue Ellen and Bill and 40 other people on our caravan tour. I'll have to say that our favorite memories were the activities at the Panama Canal.